to the Act Social Podcast. We want to give a quick thank you to these Christian companies, Abundant TV, Hobby Lobby, Grand Canyon University, and Take 12 Recovery Radio. Let's get started with today's show.
All right, it worked. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Sean Whitson, CEO, founder of the Act Social platform. And one of the things that we're blessed enough to do is have users in our platform, which gives us the stories, which really tells us a lot of things that God uniquely does in each of those. And we kind of started this because it felt like the podcast, because it kind of felt like the right thing to do. But now that we've done a few episodes in, a few weeks in, we realize how fun this is to actually meet people, meet our users and meet their stories or hear their stories and kind of hear what they're doing. And not always just in their podcast, but their businesses and a lot of the things that they're done. And it's so neat to hear how God has worked through that life. And we joke around on some of our previous podcasts that we should have probably named our podcast The Message in the Mess, because we find out that a lot of people do what they do today. And in looking back, even though things might have gotten a little difficult at certain times, there's a lot of times they actually wouldn't change a thing about it, which is really neat on that. So with that said, I'm super excited to bring our next guest on today's show and want to thank you so very much for the time that she's spending with us, because she's very, very busy. When you see towards the end of all the things that they do, they're very busy people. So we're very blessed to have a few minutes of their time. But this is Dr. Heidi, and she does several different things. We'll get to that. But Dr. Heidi, thank you so very much for being on the show, ma'am.
Oh, thank you, Sean. The pleasure is all mine.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk a little about, especially towards the end, the Red House Productions, your Flute 360, which is extremely unique and a really neat story there too. And of course, J&K Productions, a lot of the things that you and your husband do. So you know what? If you don't mind, let's go ahead and just dig right in. If you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself and get into background, we'll kind of go right into some stories and stuff that I know the audience is learning that they're here to hear. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
you had the
amazing.
floor.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, because you mentioned my husband, just a quick backstory
Mhm.
of where we are and where we live. My name is Heidi, like you said, and I've been married to my husband, Eric J. Begay, for the last 17 years.
Oh,
And
awesome.
God is so, so good with that. He has blessed our marriage profoundly, and I'm forever grateful for that. And we have some cat fur babies, and we live outside of Dallas,
Oh,
Texas. I'm originally from Chicago, so if you hear my nasally northern accent and you're like, wait, she doesn't
that's
sound
funny.
like she has a southern drawl, that's why. And we've been in Texas really for the last 15 years of the 17 years that we've been married. So we've
Awesome.
been Texans for quite some time. And I like to introduce myself as a creative serial entrepreneur. I
Uh-huh.
wear a lot of different hats, but the entire business portfolio makes sense once you understand which entity and what in which business entity does what. So we really, Eric and I met as music students and we are music professionals. And from there and from that love of sharing music and producing music and teaching music, other business entities have unfolded. And we can talk about that later. But I'm a musician, wife, and cat mom.
Awesome. Awesome. That's an awesome way to go about it. Yes. Fur babies are very, very important.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they definitely are. That's great. That is so good. And I'd actually forgotten about the Chicago part, but I don't hear that northern and I don't see the southern draw, but you sound actually, yeah, you sound Texan as well. So that's great. So tell me, I know that we can dig right into stories you guys have seen some times that God has allowed you to go through on that. So, as much as you're comfortable with, we can bless the audience with what details you want to share about what God's brought you through in you guys.
Oh, sure. And I love how you highlighted this statement of, the mess in the message or your message from the
Mm,
mess,
yeah.
right? And I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure. And trust you me, I have seen a lot of messes, and and you're right. Like in your introduction, you said a lot of people looking back in hindsight look back at how God's hand was
Mhm.
through those different circumstances and they wouldn't change it for the world. And I completely confirmed that for me and my walk with God, I wouldn't change anything at all, because at the end of the day, God is great and he's sovereign, and he, his thoughts are not our thoughts, his ways are not our ways. And I'm so thankful that he sits on that throne and not me. And I know a lot of times I try to push him out and say, I know better.
I
And
know
be,
I'm bad.
and that's the humanness in all of us. But
Mhm.
really just surrendering your life in all capacities, whether it's family, career, business, you name it, your health, putting him and letting him be the King of Kings sitting on that throne is, it's hard at times, especially when you don't understand why you're going through that valley season. But when you surrender that and say, God, you are good and you love me, and I know I am your daughter, I am your son,
Uh-huh.
please take the reins to this horse, so that way, you can be the King of Kings and
Uh-huh.
the Lord of my life. It's such a blessing to walk and to be in that intimate relationship with Christ.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Did you grow up in a Christian household? Did you grow up in Chicago or just from Chicago and y'all moved around or anything? Was it
No, I
primarily
was
Chicago?
primarily Chicago, uh-huh.
Okay.
And then my college years, I moved around a lot. So the
Mhm.
first year was the freshman year was in Charleston, Illinois, about 3 hours south of Chicago. Then I went to Nacogdoches,
Yeah.
Texas, my sophomore year. And then
Oh, yeah.
finally, my junior, senior year, I graduated from the University of Arizona in Tucson. That's where I met my husband. And
Gotcha.
speaking of career and business, I think because a lot of your guests have talked about their career walk and the different
Mhm.
pivots that they have taken, I guess we
Yeah.
can talk about, some of those messes in my
Absolutely.
testimony.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
have 3 degrees in music, and my terminal degree is a Doctor of Musical Arts
Uh-huh.
in flute performance from Texas Tech.
Uh-huh.
And I graduated there in May of 2018. And these last 7 years have been probably the messiest 7 years of my life.
Mm,
And maybe that's where we can dive into specifically, because I think it can really resonate with a lot of your listeners in terms
yeah.
of not understanding God's plan and letting it unfold in his timing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I
Yeah.
am
Oh my
I am
goodness.
not the most patient person. And
Same.
yeah, and so with that degree, so to kind of go back a little bit, and hopefully this can bring a lot of hope to your listeners. But when I was 11, 12, Sean, in
Mhm.
Chicago, God whispered
Uh-huh.
on my heart, education and flute and music. And I was really drawn to the arts. So before I even was a flutist, I was a ballerina. And so we just, dove into the arts, and my family really supported that. My brother played the saxophone, my sister was in choir, et cetera, et cetera. And at 13, I remember going to a band camp in Charleston, Illinois at EIU, and I remember the flute professor there. At the time, it was Dr. Diane Boyd Schultz. And as a really young, impressionable young lady, I remember how well poised she was and still is to this day, and just how she put herself and threw herself into her students on a personal level and a professional level. And I remember that impacted me so much. I remember saying, I want to be Dr. Heidi one day.
Uh,
And then you fast forward 20 years, and at 33, I graduated with that degree. So the
yeah.
reason why I give you that context is because that was something that was very evident in my life that God was calling me to do. And as a disclaimer, or as a side note for your listeners, because this is not a well known tidbit outside of the music world, but you do not go and get a terminal degree in music performance unless you are going to specifically go into academia.
Ah,
So you do not get that degree
I
if you want to
see.
go and play in orchestra, or you don't get that degree if you want to
Yeah.
XYZ. It's
Yeah.
specifically to be a music professor at an accredited university where music is taught.
Very
So
dedicated.
I knew I was
Yeah.
going to be a flute professor, and
Yeah.
that was my calling.
Uh-huh.
And in 2014, after teaching for quite some time a large flute studio in Fort Worth, Texas, God, clear as day, just like you and I sitting right here and chatting it up, I was finishing up teaching at a middle school in Southlake, Texas, and I was putting my
Oh
flute
yeah.
away in the case. And clear as day, God whispered on my heart, DMA. And I said, okay. And I said, I will pray about this. I will bring it to my husband. And
Uh-huh.
sure enough, I brought it to Eric, and he goes, yep, I felt the same thing, in my
Uh-huh.
own individual world with him,
Uh-huh.
and my walk with him, and my
Uh-huh.
conversations with him. And it was confirmed. And so from 2014 to 2015, I underwent really deep practicing again to get ready for those musical auditions. And because I was a teacher for so long, my playing had kind of slacked a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So I upped the ante with my playing from 14 to 15. And I did the degree from 15 to 18. So I felt really confident that I was being super obedient.
Yeah.
I was like,
I bet.
I had a supportive husband, and he helped me through that terminal degree. I
Uh-huh.
did it within 3 years. That was a huge blessing because those terminal
Uh-huh.
degrees can take 5, 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And I was really proud of the work that we had put in. And after that, my world basically came crashing down.
Mhm.
For 2 years, I was unemployed from 18 to 20, and I was nonstop seeking employment. And
Wow.
those 2 years, I had a lot of, I'm going to try not to tear up saying this, but I had a lot of hard conversations and tough conversations
Mm.
with God, and just saying, why are you allowing this to happen?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
asked me to get this degree, and
Yeah.
I'm unemployed. This doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And so then
Mm.
2020, well,
Man.
let me say it this way. During that time, as I'm wrestling with God and trying to let
Mhm.
him win,
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Comprende. Yeah.
yeah, as I'm wrestling with God and having these, bringing these tough questions to him, there was one time, Sean, specifically, I said, I'm a flute professor, and I should be making X amount of salary per year, and I have these
Yeah.
degrees, and look at these, credentials you blessed me with. And I was listing off all of these earthly titles, and he just
Yeah.
lovingly said, Heidi, look at the identity marks that you're giving yourself.
Mm.
Yes, these are all important to a certain degree because, yes, you did work hard
Yeah.
for it, and I get that. But the main
Mm.
identifier that's going to only matter at the end or at
Mhm.
all is your identity in me.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
identity in me.
We're all
And
so guilty of
mhm,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
right, because we live in this earthly world.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we sometimes forget about that spiritual world, and we forget about
Yeah.
sometimes that spiritual calling, and how this is God's life, and this is the
Yeah.
life he's given us, and we
Yeah.
are on borrowed breath.
Yeah.
And here we are
You're right.
dictating and telling him and wagging our fingers like, like I should be this and I should be doing that, and you know
Yep.
what I mean? What gives? But
Yes.
in the way he always has molded me, Sean, has always been this soft molding. It's just this soft, like, kind of this loving, like, nudge and tap on the shoulder, like, hey girl, I've got you, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
A
he's
gentle hug from
a
him.
gentle
Yeah.
hug, and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, yes, daddy, yes, Abba. And he just lovingly said, you're my daughter. You're my daughter. That's your
Oh,
identity. That's your
yeah.
identification mark. That's your identity.
Yeah.
And I really just, it was a huge relief. It was a great reminder. It just felt like the weight of the world got off my shoulders. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm trying to make, post graduation, I'm trying to make my career look like what I see in my mind's eye.
Right.
What do
Right.
you want? And then from
Yeah.
there, we can go into how the
That's hard
businesses
to
have,
ask.
yeah,
Yeah. But
it is.
when you're broken, it gets a little easier when you're actually broken
Yeah.
because you give up a little on yourself,
Yeah,
you know,
you do.
and you
You
give it to
come to
him.
the
Yeah.
end of your rope, and you're just like, okay,
Hmm.
please take the wheel, because I've
Yeah.
been driving and I'm trying to do this in my own strength.
Mhm.
And I have come to the end of the road where I can no longer do it in my strength. And I need you every second of every
Mm.
day to lead the way with each and every footstep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that is so true. And so many people um, don't realize, do or don't, depending on if they've been there at that level of hardships at that point. It's so easy to say, "Oh, I'll lay it before God's feet, your will, not my own," unconsciously not realizing at a human state that you're not really depending on it at most points in your life until it comes to that point. There's a totally different thing of when you're actually going through it. It almost quivers your voice to say, "I give it to you.
Yeah.
I give it to you." It's, I'm done. I can't. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's so easy to say.
Oh,
when you're not
for
going through it?
sure. And I'm just as guilty
Yeah.
as that. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that he says, in the word, I draw to the brokenhearted.
Uh-huh.
And we serve a God who's living, and we serve a God who was rejected and mocked and
Right.
spat on and
Right.
rejected. And he
Mhm.
knows heartache. He knows the
That's right.
ultimate pain of hanging on that cross. So
Yeah.
anytime, I'm going to try not to tear up again.
Yeah.
This is more of a blessing for me than anyone else, just
Yeah.
because I get to sit in that
Awesome.
remembrance of his faithfulness. But
Yeah.
he knows pain. He knows physical
Mhm.
pain, and we don't have a God. We don't have a father who's sitting on the throne and looking down on us and saying, "Oh, too bad that you're going through that."
Right.
No,
Yeah.
he literally understands. He sent his one and only son to endure
Right.
the most tremendous, heartfelt
Mm.
ache of crucifixion that none of
Yes.
us will be able to wrap our minds around ever.
I know.
And when
Right.
Jesus says, I am walking alongside you, I understand your pain. You are not
Mhm.
forgotten, you are not forsaken. I am
Right.
yours. He means that. That's not
Really
just words
does.
on a page. That's living proof. And
Right.
so I'm just so thankful that we have a God that we get to serve who does that for us and who
Exactly.
understands our pain.
Exactly. Exactly. Out of pure curiosity, because I'm going to ask you this, but I know in asking this that our little while is not God's little while. I know those timelines are different, but when you surrendered to Him, how much longer did it take till that next stage of life appeared for you?
Good
I'm just
question.
curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm still in it, to be very honest. I
Uh-huh.
really am.
Hmm.
And it's good and I want to be that honest because I don't want people to have, I mean, God can work at any rate of speed. He could,
Uh-huh.
totally turn mountains and do a 180 overnight. Or it could be you're in the desert for 40 years and you're
That's
waiting
right.
for that promised land,
That's true. Yeah.
and
That makes
that's
people go, ew, 40 years.
oh.
Yeah.
And I'm still going ugh, just a little bit
Yeah.
from time to time. But good question. So in 2020, when I surrendered it, I had a job application and I was offered a position outside of Shanghai, China, to be the music coordinator of this new music conservatory. And it was in a
Wow.
town called Tongzong. And I was over the moon, Sean, because both my maternal side and my paternal side of grandparents,
Uh-huh.
and they were all missionaries in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So my dad's side is mostly did their ministry work in Japan and Tokyo,
Uh-huh.
Japan, and then my mother's side they mostly did missionary work in what was then called French Equatorial Africa and now is Central
Uh-huh.
African Republic.
Uh-huh.
But so both of my sides, we have a lineage of ministry work. So I say that because I grew up hearing about stories from Japan, Africa. My maternal grandmother was
Yeah.
obsessed with Native American culture. I married a Navajo man. My sister married a Kenyan man.
That's right.
And
Uh-huh.
so we just had this
Wow.
like melting plot,
Yeah.
melting pot of
Yeah.
all of these different cultures and languages. So when I started thinking, okay, maybe there's not jobs here in the States, maybe
Uh-huh.
let me start broadening my horizons and looking abroad. That got me
Uh-huh.
excited because of that background.
Right.
And so I applied to this job in China. I was offered the job. It was going to be a great salary, everything, all the perks. I'm like, yes, God,
Uh-huh.
thank you for answering my prayer. This is wonderful. And I
Yeah.
was over the moon ecstatic because my husband and I, we were going to go on an adventure, and
Exactly.
it lit us up.
Whew. That is
And
an
then
adventure.
answered
Yeah.
prayers. Here's a job. I'm ready to go. Work visa, all done. Worldwide pandemic hit. Bye bye job.
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Having to
that
put the
COVID
years
thing.
together. Oh
Yeah.
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 Oh
Yeah.
no.
And so then
Okay.
I went back to the drawing board saying, okay, let me go back, and applying to these academic jobs. And my husband lovingly said, he's like, you can keep beating this horse. But because of the market of, again, just for context for your listeners, the tenure track academic music professor positions are
Uh-huh.
dwindling at a very alarming
Mm,
rate. So
mm.
the amount of graduates that they're pushing out versus the amount of jobs that are on the other side, the math doesn't math. And so he said, you can
Wow.
keep beating this horse. You can keep applying to these few jobs that are posted, but the
Mhm.
odds, it doesn't look favorable. And how about we just repackage you and see what God wants to do with your degree
Mhm.
in a way that's going to glorify Him? And it doesn't mean, because I thought, and again, this is my human mind, and hopefully somebody can resonate with this. It's like I felt
Mhm.
like I failed because I got that degree and I
Mm.
didn't get that job that matched it. I felt like I failed, and it wasn't, that was so far from the truth. That was
Right.
not,
Right.
you know. And so Eric just said, let's really surrender this again. The job in China was a great blessing, and it looked promising, but let's find a really unique way to package up your skill sets. And just because you're not teaching in those traditional walls per se doesn't mean that
Mhm.
what you can build over here for God's glory, and it could look like a different picture than what you had envisioned, and
Yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
just as great if not better. And
Yeah.
so basically what was running around in the background during this entire time was my Flute 360 podcast. So he said, let's not use this
Yes.
anymore as a resume builder, but let's actually use this and just turn it into an amplify it, multiply
Mhm.
it, where it's
Mhm.
a bona fide business for you, where you can bring listeners in, you can make connections, build relationships, and your listeners can turn into actual students, clients, etc.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then from there,
Yeah.
that's what I've been building since 2020. And then the
Wow.
businesses has grown into Red House, which is our podcast production company, and also
Uh-huh.
J&K Productions, which is album recording work and live sound for musicians. So you can
Exactly.
see in that
The
business portfolio how
conglomerate
it's
of.
all, yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, so
Wow. That's
I
really neat.
yeah, so I received that
Yeah.
answer pretty quick, and but at the same time,
Yeah.
then it we were asked to pivot again, and we've been
Yeah.
growing these three businesses for the last 5 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's probably been enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's right, been enjoyable. And with your personality, you're driven. And that's one of the reasons that you and I share that it's hard to give things over to God. I don't know if you're guilty of this, but I'm like, oh, let me put this at your feet, Father. And then you're like, you're not going to do anything with it. You pick it back up and run with it because you're just driven to do so. Because of that, uh, you and I's personality probably are similar to where you feel like you failed at something if it wasn't exactly the way you envisioned it, because it is just drive, bang, bang, make this happen at that time. And if God changes the path, you have this little bit of gloom inside that you failed, but we match in that personality, but it's absolutely not true. You by far did not fail. In fact, you exceeded, because there's something to be said of listening to God's word. You know, a lot of people, it's tough to decipher. None of us ever perfect it, listening to God's, direction, unless you're closing your flute case and he kind of yells it in your ear, or it's not exactly a quiet prompting, like you would normally do it. So it takes work to listen to God's path. So that is a success, to get to a spiritual maturity level relationship with him, to where you get a little better at listening to his direction. And his direction has guided you into some really neat avenues here
Oh, thank
for
you.
that, for sure. So yeah, definitely for that. So tell us a little bit about, if a Flute 360 is your podcast, and that is, we're going to post links and stuff in here on that. But Flute 360, I know you can Google that and pull that up.
Yeah, that's very accessible. We've produced over 300 plus episodes. And
Wow,
so
that's
Eric's
awesome.
Eric's an audio video engineer, and so I
Hmm.
wouldn't have been able to produce 300 plus episodes without his talents and his time
Yeah.
into the platform as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So on those shows, because I know that of our people that are both in our platform and our email subscriber list and stuff that'll get this podcast. What tell us about your Flute 360 podcast, and kind of what you guys talk about and focus on. So maybe we can hit those certain listeners in there that it would resonate with them on that, for that podcast.
Oh, thank you, Sean. That's very sweet of you. Now, I know flute is like so niche. So most of your
Yeah.
listeners are probably like, not a flutist. So I'll try to take 10 steps back and make it more accessible, and talk about things that are more of a broad stroke for maybe just like
Uh-huh.
musicians out there.
Uh-huh.
But we talk about very fluty things on Flute 360, and
Got
I
it. Got it.
interview
Yeah. Yeah.
holistic doctors and flutists and
Hmm.
composers, music shop owners, things like that.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But for taking 10 steps back, and talking about God's testimony with Flute to 360, it originally was my dissertation. So you can
Mhm.
see how God used something of that degree to catapult me and launch me into it being the foundation to my
Oh,
business. And
that's
so
neat.
again,
Mhm.
it's not always what we perceive, it's not always sometimes what we expect it to be. But God, and I'm
Mhm.
still learning this, God does this beautiful way of orchestrating people,
Mhm.
relationships, experiences, things that you've created, and weave it into this tapestry,
Mhm.
that we may not see the entire picture, because we're one yellow thread. We're just
It's so
one
true.
thread into it. But when
Yeah.
you weave it together with the teal and the oranges and the greens, and you
Uh-huh.
step back, you're like, oh my goodness, it's painting this garden picture or something. And
Yeah.
so that dissertation, it went from dissertation to kind of a hobby thing because
Uh-huh.
I was really loving it. And then I got smart and said, oh, I'm going to make it part of my resume building adventures, in the sense of saying, okay, I'm publishing content on a weekly basis. Let me
Uh-huh.
use that under the category of publications on my CV. That's how I believe to have received that job in China, because
Wow.
they saw,
Yeah.
okay, there's this
See.
international outreach of these publications for the
Uh-huh.
world to access for free. Oh, we want her to work with us because she has those
I can
international
see that.
relations.
Uh-huh.
So, and
Yeah,
then
that
it
makes
went
sense.
into, and it had this organic evolution into then it being my business. And so I just want to highlight that for the listeners, because you may create something initially and you have it on your heart to create X project, but don't be surprised if it evolves into a different entity than what you had initially thought of. And
So
that's
true.
okay, especially if God's
Mhm.
hand is in it. And especially if He's saying, yeah, great, okay, and we're going to go this way. And,
Exactly. Exactly.
and I wouldn't want it any other way, because the people I get to work with through the podcast, the people who come into my circle, we have bettered each other's lives through partnerships and collaborations and sponsorships. The
Uh-huh.
people who I get to teach in a teacher student relationship, the students are across the world, from Finland to Canada to the UK to Russia to Africa. And
Wow.
you have to stop and think, Sean, if this resonates with one of your listeners, would I have had those people, those specific people in my world, if I
Mhm.
was a flute professor in Iowa?
That's right. Yep.
Probably
You're
not.
exactly right.
You know
You're
what I mean?
exactly right.
And when I listen to my students and their testimonies and the things that they come to me with, the
Mhm.
flute is just an excuse. It literally is a vehicle, right? It's just
You're right.
air quote an instrument.
Yeah.
and I mean that twofold. It's just an
No. Yeah.
instrument to bring these people together because of this platform that God has built and given me. And I'm
Mhm.
so blown away just by their testimonies. And some of them are believers, some of them are non-believers.
Mhm.
But God has really been asking me and lovingly uh, encouraging me to use my platform as His ministry. So when
Mhm.
I'm talking to flutists and musicians through the podcast, I am talking about what God has done for me,
That's
both
awesome.
personally,
Yeah.
health wise, and musically. And
Uh-huh.
there are flutists who are coming to know God
That's awesome.
because of a
Yeah.
little instrument called the flute.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I don't know if I would have been able to be that vocal about my faith in the
Uh-huh.
academic setting, unless
Uh-huh.
it was, of course, a
Good
Christian
point.
organization, right?
That's right.
And so
Good
these
point.
different little
Yeah.
things that He shows me along the way of saying, look at these relationships, look how, we get to nurture this person and pray for
Mhm.
this person during this trial
Mhm.
and uplift people from scripture and the gospel. And it's just amazing to see I'm doing air quote because I don't know if this is a video podcast, but air quote what a little microphone can do. And so
Exactly.
if you're that listener out there and you're thinking, how can I serve? How can I use my skill set? How can I preach the good news in
Yeah.
a way where I can connect with my fellow chefs in the culinary world? How can I connect with,
Exactly.
and whatever your
Exactly.
niche is, if you're a dog lover, a tea lover, a gardener, an ex, I can't say that word, an exercise guru. No matter
Yeah.
your niche, how can I serve? How can I bring
Yeah.
people together? How can I glorify God and use my talents that He's given me? It could, air quote, just be a little microphone. And next thing
Exactly.
you know, you're building new doors. The doors that you are building, people are knocking on them, and you
Uh-huh.
get to, glorify God in that way. So I just wanted to
Uh-huh.
offer that big nugget and big picture of what a podcast can do, and
Yeah.
specifically what Food 360 has done for me. Um,
Because
and
it's
yeah,
perfect point and segue because yes, they know you're Christian. It's not a primarily only Christians 360 or Flute 360 podcast on there, but they see you, they watch you if they're
mhm,
not Christian, and you're still loving on them. And those little mentions, they're just seed planting, that you're doing inside there, and that's a lot of all we're really called to do. A lot of times, we're not called to be necessarily. I hate saying this, but the hell and brimstone type of approach. It's that loving approach and planting seeds with people about
yeah,
what true, real Christianity really is about and following Him in your life because of it.
yeah,
But that gives us back into the segue because, yes, you might be somewhat niche with the flute industry with that podcast, but I want to open the door to all our listeners because God's given everyone a gift. And a huge part of those gifts are something that they do or can do, and that's their niche. And just like you mentioned, whether they think that they are just a minimum wage dog walker on that, there is nothing that stops them from starting a dog walking podcast on that and spreading the exact same way you're doing with these niches. But I gotta tell you, the probably some of the largest listening bases are in the most successful small niche podcasts because people find that, and it's easier to acquire the people. There's a lot less of a shotgun approach, trying to do something like that. So that segues back into the Red House Productions. So tell us about that side of the business, because we're going to talk to the listeners that have thought about taking a podcast or starting a podcast, and they hear your niche and think, well, goodness, I do love this portion of my life, and it's a hobby right now, but how neat would it be to be a podcast? Tell us what Red House Productions does and the consultancy type stuff to get someone started if they were to come in.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Sean. So a lot of people got excited and they saw Food to 360 as a podcast and they said,
Uh-huh.
how did you build it? How did you get sponsors for it?
Good.
How did you
Uh-huh.
grow it to, X amount of listeners per month? And then you notice these breadcrumbs, and you notice these conversations from people saying, ooh, can you help me with launching a podcast? Ooh, can Eric edit my show? And then
Right.
next thing you know, another company is birthed. So it's
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
to see again how God works, because it wasn't just Food 360, it segued into the podcast production world, and that's Red House. So we help our
Uh-huh.
clients to launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And it doesn't matter your
Awesome.
niche, we have clients in the entertainment world, business world, health world, culinary world, and just to
Mhm.
bring their voice and have a really high quality production through either Eric's editing or our editing team,
Mhm.
whether a podcaster needs help coaching or consultation with marketing ideas or
Mhm.
monetization goals. I help my
Mhm.
clients with that. And we're really passionate about it because Eric and I literally have this great marriage in the sense of not just partnership in life, but also business partnership where we get to bring both of our own strengths to the table. And
That's
he's
awesome.
very much into the tech world and the DOS
Mhm.
systems and the cords and the gadgets and the bells and whistles, things that go way over my head. And I've been a trained educator my entire life. So then I get
Uh-huh.
to come in and complete that circle with him with coaching,
That's perfect.
consultation, and things like that. So we get to come together in that capacity. And that's a lot of fun and a huge blessing to get to work with your spouse in that way.
Exactly. That is a huge blessing. That is a huge blessing. And is that kind of where JK Productions comes into the backside as well, right?
Yeah,
For
then
the for that
yeah,
help with that. Okay, good.
exactly. And
That's what
so
I thought.
what happened there was, oh, you're a guitarist, Eric. Oh, you're a flutist, Heidi. Oh, you have albums and music and you've won awards for your playing. Oh,
Uh-huh.
can you record my next recital? Oh, can
That's
you come
perfect.
and do live sound for
Yeah.
our concerts? And so we get to then take the tech side of Red House and help the tech side of supporting podcasters over here, and then go over here and take that same tech support and help musicians with their needs of
Gotcha.
recording, mastering, etc.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. What a perfect triangle of businesses there that that help each other out on that with people on that.
Oh,
So that's really neat. That's really
yeah.
neat. So we're going to put if anyone on listening doesn't have the patience to go down through on text, just search the Red House Productions. Um, uh, Putting Dr. Heidi in with the Red House Productions probably might pull that in even quicker, but you'll find Red House Productions and we'll put the links to it there. And coming back in the JK Productions as well. But especially go check out the Flute 360 and see how Heidi is actually doing that right now. And, imagine yourself in your own niche. It's not rocket science. I've been a podcaster for a few weeks now, and it's not rocket science, but you need good guidance to actually get up and going. And that's what Red House Productions can actually bring to the table on that for you. So take God's gift and spread it to the world using technology. There's not a thing wrong with that. And don't be bashful on
Yeah.
camera, anybody listening. It's easy, super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are, you can just start with audio. So thank you so very much, Heidi, for your time today. This is really, really awesome session, and it's been a lot of fun and such a blessing to hear what God's done in your life and the story that He's still unfolding in
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Thank
by all means. In fact, I want to thank both of you for being on the podcast. What is the fur baby's name behind you?
Oh my goodness, this is
Uh,
Star.
Okay, hey Star, thank you for being on the show with Heidi today. You make us all want to go and take a cat nap watching you relax in the sunlight there.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. We're going to hop off. Enjoy the rest of your day. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, go check out what Heidi is doing and what they're getting done. We'll get those links put in. And for the rest of you, have a blessed rest of your day and upcoming weekend. This happens to be a Friday if you're live.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sean.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.